So today we are actually finishing chapter 2. So in your notes, this is day 6. It is the end of the notes packet. And it's basically taking all the skills we've learned in chapter 2 and combining them into problems where you use more than one of those skills at a time. Okay, so you see a lot of distributing. You'll see a lot of combining like terms. You'll see a lot of the fraction stuff that we did in chapter 1 comes back around. So it's kind of taking a bunch of skills, especially distributing and especially the fractions and the like terms, and sort of plopping it all together at the end. Any questions before we get going? All right, here's the first one. Yes, sir. Negative 1/20. So you multiply across the top, right? Negative 1 times 1, negative 1. Multiply across the bottom, 4 times 5 is 20. Any questions? All right, easy enough start. Here's our next one. Yes, ma'am?
Negative 6r over 6, or negative r.
Very good. So, perfect. She said negative 6r over 6. So that would be the first step, right? This is kind of like 6r over 1. So multiply across the top. I am just going to stick the negative sign with the 1. So anytime I do anything with the 1, I'm going to consider the negative as part of it. So 6r times negative 1 is negative 6r. And on the bottom you have 1 times 6. Well, over here you can take it one step further, right? Negative 6 over 6 is just negative 1. So negative r is the answer. Questions on that one? All right. All right, so there's a few different ways to approach this one. There's magically the right answer, but let's talk about how you would get that. So does anyone have an approach that they thought worked well when they did it? Yes.
First simplify like the cross.
Okay, so yes, you can definitely start simplifying. So what's one thing that you simplified? The 3 and the 18. Good. So that would be what, 1 and 6? Good. Did you take care of the 2's?
Yeah.
The 5 and the 15. Good. Now don't lose this negative sign right here, okay? Even though I wrote 1, it's still negative 1. So up top you have negative 1 times 6 times 3. That's where the negative 18 came from. And then the variables, even though they're like written to the side of the fraction, they still go with our numerator, okay? If they're in the denominator, they'll be written in the denominator. If they're written in the top, in the numerator, or just out to the side, like behind, that's still considered part of the numerator, okay? So now we have the x comes along, the y squared comes along, the z comes along. And that's it. That's as simple as it gets. Any questions? All right, let's keep it moving. Yes, sir?
Negative 4n minus 2n.
Okay, so first what'd you do?
I multiplied 1/2 by 8n and then 4n.
Good, so we have to distribute the 1/2 to both terms in parentheses. Good. So 1/2 times 8 and 1/2 times negative 4n. These would both be like 8m over 1 and negative 4n over 1. So they'll go in the top when you multiply. Or you could do that simplifying as you go, right? So make that a 1, make that a 4, make that a 1, make that a 2, like that. But you are correct. Either way, you end up with 4m minus 2n. Are those like terms?
No.
No, so that's as far as we can go on this one. Any questions? All right. Part E. All right, anyone know how to start this one? Yes, ma'am?
You could, how I did is I just divide by the bottom because if you multiply by the top, it would just do the same thing. So I got 4x minus y.
Okay, so
I multiply by the top and divide by the bottom.
okay, good. So yeah, you multiply through, you distribute the negative 1/6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after it's written like this, instead of writing it again, like 24x over 6, you just crossed them out and simplified as you went?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. All right? Works for me. So what do you get up here? How does that simplify? It's a negative times a negative, so I'll have a positive. And then 6 does go into 24. So how many times? 4. So you should end up with 4x. And then, of course, in the back, you have a minus because the term is negative. And then 6 over 6, well, that's just 1. And then you have the y. So minus 1y or minus y. What are your questions? Yes, ma'am.
So when you divide a negative by a negative, you just positive.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Did you all hear that? When you divide a negative by a negative, yes, it's positive. Don't leave double negatives. All right, this is the same process. We're just coming in from the back with what we're distributing. Now, the point that was just made is, oh, well, you can divide this number by this number. That is true in this case. Be careful, though. If this isn't a 1 on top, then you will have to do a little more. Like if this would have been a 2 on top, you got to multiply by the 2 before you divide by the 3. So, yes, but be careful. All right, so I am going to distribute that 1/3. So 1/3 times negative 12a plus 1/3 times 15. Yes? Negative 4a plus 5. I agree. And again, you can sort of cross them out as you go if you want to do it that way. They work nicely when your numerator is 1. Just be careful when it's not 1. Okay? How we feeling? All right, here's G. Getting a little harder. Yes, what are you thinking? Okay, yeah, so you're going to distribute the negative 1/7, which is like dividing by -7. So we'll do essentially just 21 divided by 7 and 63 divided by 7. Careful with the signs. We have a negative negative and a negative negative. So yeah, these both end up actually being positive, believe it or not. So 21 divided by 7, you got 3a up front. And then 63 divided by 7, both negative, so it becomes positive 9. And then the b's just sort of there, hanging out. Questions? All right, so in the front, we're going to distribute the 1/3. So you'll do 1/3 times 6x. And 1/3 times -12. And then in the back, you're distributing the -3. Keep that negative with that 3, okay? So -3 times -2x and -3 times -1. So you can see a lot of those signs in the back are going to clean up. All right, so just go ahead and multiply it out. 1/3 times 6x, it's like 6 divided by 3, right? So you get 2x. Over here, it's like -12 divided by 3, which is -4. Negative times a negative is positive 6x. Negative times a negative is positive 3. Are we done?
No.
No. Why not?
Yeah.
These are like terms. So 2x plus 6x is 8x. And then careful, this is -4 plus 3.
Oh.
So the signs are different, so you subtract them and keep the sign of the larger one. What are your questions? It's getting even more fun. All right, so up front, what are we distributing? You can just say it.
The 7,
The 1/7, good. And in the back, what are we distributing?
the
Negative 1/5. Don't lose that negative. It stays with the 1/5, okay? So up front, we'll have 1/7 times 49x. And 1/7 times -56y. And negative 1/5 times 10x. And negative 1/5 times -20y. And then again, our numerators are all 1, so it's kind of just like dividing. So up here we get, yeah?
7x.
Okay, and then,
-8y.
okay, and then,
-2x.
okay, and
4y.
plus 4y, good. And we're done. Nope, we're not. These are like terms. Again, the signs are going to get someone, and it's going to be so heartbreaking to watch. The negative stays with the 2x, and this negative Need to use something else. Stays with the 8.
I thought it was positive 2x.
That came from right here. This 10x was positive. So then we're distributed a negative 1/5. So negative times a positive, it's minus. What are your questions? All right. What did we learn about today? Yes?
Multiplying and distributing with fractions.
Good. Distributing with fractions. If you're still unsure of something, you can write it out here. And then we can start class tomorrow by talking about it. Or you can bring it up to my desk and we'll talk about it then. And then make sure you're writing yourself these sample questions. These are great ways to go back and study, and they will help you remember what you learned that day. Any questions?